Homer brings money home and is physically present, but he never listens to his kids, doesn't educate them, and can't offer advice. They have fun together, but he lacks the responsibility and maturity Bart needs from a father. The worst part is that Homer will never change, and no matter how much Bart wishes otherwise, he has to accept that he can't expect anything different from him. In this video, we'll examine Homer Simpson and how people like him, though without malicious intent, end up damaging the lives of those around them. You don't need a villain to hurt us. Sometimes, a distant dad is enough. Additionally, I'll talk about the predictions The Simpsons has made, like Donald Trump's presidency, Lady Gaga's Super Bowl performance, and many more. How did the writers predict the future? Are the conspiracy theories correct? Or how did they know what was coming? At a concert on Springfield Lake, a band is playing, and everyone is enchanted until the singer takes a moment to speak about the environment. The crowd boos. No one wants to hear it. Little Lisa Simpson insists it's important. The lake is so polluted that the barge where the band is performing has started to disintegrate. Still, people keep booing and throwing things. The band sinks with the barge and dies in the toxic water. The next day, the church is full for their funeral. Lisa arrives with her family. Marge, her mom, worries about being late. Homer, her dad, complains because he didn't even want to come. Bart is distracted with his video game. Maggie, the baby, makes no sound, and Grandpa Abraham is asleep in a corner. The Simpsons premiered in 1989 and became a success for a particular reason. At that time, all U.S. comedy series followed the same formula. They depicted perfect families with wise parents and well-behaved kids who, though occasionally getting into trouble, always learned a lesson. Some of the most popular shows were Full House, Family Ties, and The Cosby Show. But Matt Groening, a cartoonist, felt none of that reflected reality. So he created something more honest. A family where the dad is lazy and selfish, the mom handles everything, the son is rude, the daughter is misunderstood, and the baby gets no attention. Unlike other shows, there were no moral lessons, problems weren't always resolved, and people didn't change. After years of series featuring perfect families where ordinary people not only felt unrepresented, but perhaps even frustrated for not meeting that standard, The Simpsons arrived. People connected immediately because, for once, they saw something that resembled their lives. They felt identified, validated, and even relieved. Moreover, the series doesn't just portray family dynamics, but also American society in general. Springfield, the city where they live, is a microcosm of the United States, with corrupt politicians, ruthless businessmen, a police force that never solves anything, and a church that seems more like a business. This was the reason for its success. People saw themselves reflected. The situations, problems, and dynamics mirrored what they experienced daily. Suddenly, a ray of sunlight illuminates Grandpa. He wakes up with a jolt, stands up, and shouts, "Horrible things are going to happen. Listen, everyone, twisted tail, 1,000 eyes, trapped forever. Beware, time is short. EPA, EPA, EPA. He then has a convulsive fit. The family quickly removes him from the church. Homer, unfazed, asks the kids, "Who wants waffles?" Marge tells him to wait, that his dad just had a religious experience they can't ignore, but Homer attributes it to senile dementia and heads straight to eat his waffles. Later, Homer checks his to-do list. He needs to fix a hole in the yard, but feels too lazy. So he decides to hide it, placing Maggie's sandbox over it and calling it a day. Homer is the series' protagonist and a satire of the average American father. He has a middle-class job that barely covers the bills, has no grand aspirations or desire to improve, and his life revolves around watching TV, eating junk food, and drinking beer, leading to weight issues and near alcoholism. Unlike the wise, exemplary dads of other comedies, Homer is clumsy and irresponsible, sometimes even putting his kids in danger. When they need support, he has no idea what to say or do. Instead of guiding them, he ignores them, mocks them, or, in the worst cases, hurts them physically, especially Bart. Beyond bringing money home, it's Marge who truly takes care of the kids. Many have seen in Homer their own immature, irresponsible, emotionally distant parents, more concerned with their comfort than engaging in their children's lives. Homer removes a wasp nest and spots an opportunity. He stuffs it into Ned Flanders' mailbox, his neighbor and arch enemy, and walks away as if nothing happened. In reality, Ned has done nothing wrong to Homer. He's kind, optimistic, always willing to help, a dedicated and loving father, and very hardworking, basically the opposite of Homer. And that's exactly why Homer hates him, because Ned represents everything he isn't and, deep down, knows he should be. Homer despises and mocks him to feel better about himself. It's easier to ridicule someone with great qualities than to admit his own shortcomings. What's interesting about the series is that, while it gives the spotlight to characters like Homer, trapped in mediocrity, it neither idealizes nor turns them into heroes. It shows them as they are, with their flaws and limitations, and even contrasts them with people like Flanders, who do strive, live with values, and set a good example. So, while the series portrays average people, it also makes clear that not everyone is like Homer. There are those who care for their families and live with integrity. It doesn't romanticize or justify mediocrity. It simply exposes it as it is. Homer is repairing the roof when he accidentally hammers a nail into his eye. Bart laughs uncontrollably, and his furious father strangles him. They start a game of dares. Homer challenges Bart to climb the TV antenna. When he does, Homer shakes it to make him fall. Bart laughs hysterically, ending up hanging from the roof, about to fall. Instead of helping, Homer shakes it to make him lose balance. Rather than protecting and guiding his son, Homer punishes him with violence and puts him in dangerous situations. More than an authority figure, he's just another immature friend. However, Bart seems delighted. He likes that Homer isn't strict but fun. But over time, he'll realize that not having a responsible, mature father has its consequences. From his yard, Flanders warns them to be careful, that Bart could get hurt. Homer yells, "Shut up, Flanders," and Bart, imitating his father's example, repeats, "Shut up, Flanders. Remember this, it'll be important later." Meanwhile, Lisa goes door to door trying to get signatures to clean Springfield Lake. No one pays attention. Everyone shuts the door in her face. Suddenly, she hears someone doing the same thing. It's Colin, a red-haired boy with a tie and an Irish accent, trying to convince people that the environment matters. Lisa falls in love immediately. Marge remains uneasy about what Grandpa said in church, analyzing the phrases "twisted tail," "1,000 eyes," "trapped forever," EPA. She has no idea what it could mean. Homer and Bart continue their dares, loading bricks on their backs while shooting at each other with a toy shotgun. Homer rides a skateboard to Krusty Burger and back, completely naked. Bart refuses, the girls would see him. His father pressures and mocks him, calling him a chicken. Angry, Bart strips and launches on the skateboard, riding through town and scandalizing everyone. The police spot him and give chase. Bart tries to flee but crashes and is caught. The officers handcuff him to a pole but leave for lunch, abandoning him naked in the middle of town. Nelson, the school bully, shows up and mocks him. Completely humiliated, Bart can only lower his gaze. Homer takes hours to look for him. When he finally arrives, Bart asks him to tell the police he was the one who dared him, but Homer asks what it would imply for him to take the blame. The officers say he'd only need to take a 1-hour parenting class. Homer is outraged and says it was all Bart's fault. Bart is devastated. He asks his father if he at least brought his clothes, and Homer replies yes, he brought everything. But when Bart checks, he realizes Homer forgot the pants at the restaurant. Bart covers himself as best he can. Flanders approaches, and Bart responds aggressively. "What do you want, Flanders? Remember this, it'll be relevant." Ned, in a kind tone, says he has an extra pair of pants if Bart wants them. Bart asks why he's helping him if he's not his son. Flanders smiles and replies that they're neighbors, and he's sure Homer would do the same for his kids. Just then, Homer steals Flanders' kids' fries and eats them without the slightest remorse. Bart watches and, for the first time, despises him. Bart used to enjoy his father's irresponsibility. He found it fun that Homer was so carefree, setting no rules or telling him what to do, acting like a friend. But this time, Bart starts seeing things differently. Homer pressured him into doing something he clearly didn't want, put him in a humiliating situation, and when it all went wrong, instead of taking responsibility, he abandoned him. To avoid a minimal punishment, he preferred to blame him. Bart begins to realize that Homer isn't a good father. He doesn't care for him, doesn't guide him, and even betrays him when it suits him. He's selfish, immature, inconsistent, and lacks the capacity to be the support figure Bart needs. Homer notices his son is upset and tries to ask what's wrong, but gets distracted by something far more interesting: a pig with a chef's hat. He imagines all the adventures they could have, and, without thinking twice, decides to adopt it. When he gets home, he shows it to Marge, who looks at it and panics. Twisted tail, what Grandpa mentioned in his prophecy. She tells Homer to get rid of it. But, as always, he ignores her. That night, Homer is brushing his new pet, completely enchanted. From his treehouse, Bart watches, disheartened. He then turns to Flanders' window, where he's tucking his kids into bed, serving them tea, covering them with blankets, and saying good night with a tenderness Bart has never received from his own father. He sighs, so that's what affection is. After being disappointed by Homer, Bart has started to see Ned in a new light. He no longer finds it so ridiculous that he's so kind, responsible, and caring. Though he never allowed himself to admit it, he's now realizing he yearns for that too. Frustrated, Bart grabs his slingshot and aims at Homer. But before firing, Flanders asks if he had a tough day. Bart hesitates, but ends up sharing a bit of what happened. Flanders listens patiently, and when he finishes, he says, "If you want, we could go fishing. It always cheers up my kids." Bart recalls the only time his father took him fishing. Instead of teaching him patience or enjoying the moment, Homer took the easy way out, electrocuting the water so dead fish floated to the surface. Bart tells him he'd love to go fishing with him. Flanders smiles, saying he prepared hot chocolate to lift his spirits. Bart immediately responds that those things are for girls and he doesn't like them. Flanders doesn't insist, only saying he'll leave it on the window if he changes his mind. Bart sees the cup with whipped cream, chocolate sprinkles, a cookie, and even a flaming marshmallow. He makes sure no one is watching and runs to grab it, hiding as he takes a sip. It's the best thing he's ever tasted. If you recall when Bart was hanging from the roof because of his father, Flanders warned him to be careful, that he could get hurt. But Bart only replied, "Shut up, Flanders." Later, when Bart ended up naked in the middle of town, again because of Homer, Flanders tried to help, but Bart reacted with hostility. "What do you want, Flanders?" And now, disappointed by his father, Ned offered hot chocolate to cheer him up, but his first reaction was to reject it, saying it was for girls. So, every time Flanders has shown warmth or care, Bart has reacted with hostility and rejection. This could possibly be a reaction to the abusive or neglectful environment in which he grew up. For Bart, affection has never been secure. When he's received it, it's often come with mockery, rejection, or even harm, so he's likely learned to distrust it. He doesn't see it as sincere, but as uncomfortable or dangerous, preferring to reject it rather than risk being hurt again. Moreover, Bart has grown up watching Homer constantly mock Flanders and everything he represents. Perhaps unconsciously, he's learned that being tender, kind, or gentle is ridiculous, something he shouldn't seek or accept. But though Bart rejects Flanders out loud, it seems he yearns for what he offers deep down. That's why, when he thought no one was watching, he ran to take the hot chocolate, because, though he struggles to admit it, he needs that kind of affection. Bart is fishing with Flanders when suddenly a fish bites the hook. He panics and drops Ned's favorite rod into the water. At that moment, he feels a tightness in his neck, as if expecting to be strangled. But when he turns, he sees Ned still sitting calmly, not choking him as his father surely would have. Flanders says it's okay, it was just an accident. He reaches out his hand toward Bart, who instinctively covers himself, thinking he'll be hit. But Flanders only gives him a pat on the back. Something inside Bart softens. It feels so good. He asks Flanders if he can do it again. Bart has grown up with a distorted idea of love. Though his father might love him, he also ignores him, mocks him, and sometimes hurts him. But when he met Flanders, he began to question everything he'd learned. Ned is kind, attentive, and always there for his kids without ridiculing them or making them feel less. For the first time, Bart understands that affection doesn't have to hurt, that it can be genuine and constant. And so, Flanders has started to take on a paternal role in Bart's life, becoming a sort of substitute attachment figure. This happens when a child finds in another adult the stability and support they don't receive at home. These figures are key because they give the child a different model, showing them there are other ways to live, that love can be safe, and that they're not doomed to repeat what they've been given. Meanwhile, at Springfield Lake, Krusty throws his restaurant's trash into the water, empty bottles and all, while the nuclear plant dumps its waste without a care. Lisa watches the scene and grows frustrated. She convenes the whole town, warning them that if they don't do something, the lake will turn into a toxic nightmare. She shows them statistics, data, numbers, but no one pays attention. It's not until she says, "Code Black," that everyone panics. They have no idea what it means, but it sounds serious. The mayor decrees it's forbidden to dump trash in the lake. The entire town unites, cleans the water, stops throwing waste, and installs a barrier to prevent anyone from contaminating it again. Meanwhile, at home, Homer is watching TV with his pig when Marge enters and asks what he's done with the animal's waste. Proudly, Homer shows her a huge pile where he's been accumulating it. Marge, worried, says she senses this is the crisis Grandpa warned them about and insists he dispose of it properly. Homer obeys and heads to the hazardous waste treatment center, but when he arrives, the line is endless. He grows impatient, receives a call from his best friend that the donut shop is giving away its products, and he has to go now. Homer looks at the line and knows he won't make it in time. So he does what he does best, takes the easy way out, ignoring all warning signs. He drives straight to the lake, crashes through the containment wall, and, without thinking twice, dumps all the waste into the water. The water turns acidic and greenish, darkening completely. A skull appears on the surface and whispers, "Evil Homer." Realizing what he's done, he jumps in his car and flees before anyone notices. A squirrel jumps into the lake, but the water is so contaminated that, within seconds, it mutates into a creature with 1,000 eyes. The Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, finds it and takes it away for study. Russ, the EPA director, convenes an urgent meeting with President Arnold Schwarzenegger. He informs him that to save the environment, he must choose one of 5 drastic measures. Without even reading the options, the president picks the third. So, Russ and his team head to Springfield and place a giant dome over the entire city, trapping everyone with no chance of escape. Marge sees the EPA helicopters and remembers Grandpa's warning. EPA, trapped forever. His prophecy came true. I find it curious that they included the theme of prophecies or predictions, something the series is quite famous for. Maybe it's just a coincidence, but let's talk about it. What have the Simpsons predicted? The most famous prediction is Donald Trump as President of the United States. In 2000, they aired an episode where Lisa is president and mentions inheriting an economic crisis from former President Trump. At the time, it seemed like an absurd joke, but in 2016, it became reality. In 2012, the series showed Lady Gaga flying over the audience in a show, using a silver suit and harness, and 5 years later, in the 2017 Super Bowl, the singer did something almost identical. It looked straight out of the series. In 1998, an episode mentioned that Disney would buy 20th Century Fox, which happened in 2019. They also parodied Siegfried and Roy, two Las Vegas illusionists who performed with white tigers. The episode showed one of the tigers attacking during a show, and years later, Roy was attacked by a tiger during a performance. These are just a few examples, but The Simpsons has had so many coincidences with reality that many believe in conspiracy theories, that the writers are part of a secret elite, that the series is a mind control experiment, or even that it's used to leak information and gauge public reaction. But what do the writers know that we don't? How have they gotten so many things right? We'll examine that later. Russ announces via broadcast that Springfield is the most polluted city on the planet. The government has decided to lock them under that giant dome. Lisa intervenes, saying they've already stopped dumping trash in the lake. Russ responds that one person didn't get the message. Homer grows nervous, trying to hide his guilt. The whole town erupts. Who's the culprit? It was Homer. He was the straw that broke the camel's back, but definitely not the only one responsible for the environmental disaster. The real problem wasn't just him, but an entire community with the same attitude: careless, selfish, complacent. They weren't seeking to do harm, but they also didn't strive to do good. They didn't question, didn't take responsibility. They just went on with their lives, ignoring the consequences. Philosopher Hannah Arendt argued that evil doesn't arise from great acts of cruelty, but from mediocrity, indifference, and passivity. The most polluted and harmful city isn't one full of villains, but of ordinary people acting out of inertia, without questioning the impact of their actions. In light of this, Homer and people like him aren't as harmless as they seem. With their negligence, they hurt their kids, affect their neighbors, and destroy their environment. And that's the kind of evil that impacts most people, not from atrocious acts by inhumans, but from everyday selfishness and lack of responsibility in the most basic things. You don't need a villain to ruin a life, just an absent father, a boss who ignores abuse, a politician who washes their hands, or a drunk driver who doesn't care who they might hurt. Perhaps the real problem isn't exceptional wickedness, but daily indifference, passivity, and neglect. Meanwhile, in the yard, Marge watches the dome when she suddenly realizes Maggie is outside. She has no idea how she got out, but when they return, Maggie is back in her sandbox. Homer says she must have imagined it. When Marge goes back inside, Maggie uses the sandbox, placed by Homer over a hole, to move in and out of the dome. On the news, the anchor announces, "We haven't identified the culprit yet." Homer celebrates silently, but the anchor adds, "So far," and the screen shows the pig's huge waste pile with a giant sign reading, "Return to Homer Simpson." Marge and Lisa are furious. He never heeded the warnings, and his laziness destroyed the entire city. The town, with torches and pitchforks, unites to catch Homer. Marge tells him he must turn himself in, but Homer refuses. Flanders helps them escape through the window, but they fall to the ground. They run to the car, ready to flee, but Marge stops, quickly runs back inside, grabs their wedding videotape, and returns. They speed off, but don't get far because the town is holding the car, with ropes ready to hang them all, even one with a pacifier for Maggie. They don't know what to do. Maggie points to the sandbox. They jump, and the others follow, reaching the other side of the dome safely. But the EPA is looking for them. No one can leave the dome, least of all Homer Simpson. They hide in a motel. Bart, frustrated, takes a sip of whiskey and says he's suffering. Once again, we see that Homer's clumsiness and immaturity aren't harmless. His negligence has deeply affected those around him, starting with his own son. At 10 years old, Bart is already turning to alcohol to cope with his frustration. Since he never had his father's support or guidance, he doesn't know how to handle his emotions constructively, so he just mimics what he's always seen at home: Homer using alcohol to evade his problems. Homer is a satire of the average father. He fulfills the basics, provides for his family, but doesn't engage emotionally. He's not cruel or malicious, but he also shows no interest in his kids' well-being. He doesn't listen, doesn't guide, doesn't offer the example they need. And this type of father is common, which is why his attitude might seem normal, even harmless, but it isn't. The lack of interest, emotional absence, and indifference not only affect kids in the present, but also mark them for the future. Marge and Lisa are furious with Homer. They're on the street, chased by their own friends. Homer blames himself. He wasn't thinking, but has a plan: go to Alaska. No one seems convinced. Homer takes Marge's hand and says, "In every marriage, there's only one moment when you can say, 'I need you to do this with me.' That moment is now." Marge hesitates, but decides to support him. Bart, fed up, sighs. You just fell for his trap again. With no money to travel, they go to a carnival. A man approaches Homer and offers a deal. If he can complete a full loop on the sphere with a motorcycle, he wins a truck. Homer starts the engine, tries, and succeeds. Now they have the vehicle they need to reach Alaska. Meanwhile, in Springfield, the situation worsens. Resources are running out. There's no food or electricity. Everyone is desperate, but the Simpsons have arrived in Alaska, and it's beautiful. They live in a simple cabin and have fun. Everything seems perfect. Russ discovers that Springfield's people are trying to break the dome and have managed to crack it. If they get out, there'll be a national scandal. So he decides to take an extreme measure: destroy Springfield once and for all. The Simpsons are watching TV when an ad appears: the new Grand Canyon, a free space where there was once nothing. On screen, they see only a hole in the ground. Marge realizes immediately that place is Springfield. The government plans to erase their city from the map. She tells her family they have to help. The kids agree, but Homer refuses. He's happy in Alaska and doesn't care what happens to Springfield. His family looks at him horrified. How can he turn his back on everyone? Bart reminds him that Flanders tried to help, but Homer responds with contempt. What do I care about Flanders? Bart explodes, yelling, I wish he were my father. Homer snaps and strangles him. Marge intervenes, repeating the same words Homer said earlier. In every marriage, there's only one moment when you can say, I need you to do this with me. And that moment is now. She extends her hand, but Homer crosses his arms and says, That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. He yells that he's made his decision. They're staying in Alaska. Homer spends the night at a bar, killing time, waiting for his family to reflect and apologize. But when he returns to the cabin, he finds it empty. They've left only a videotape. On the screen, Marge appears, saying, Homer, I've always supported you. What keeps us together is my ability to overlook everything you do. And I've overlooked all those things because she falls silent, unable to find the answer. She no longer knows why she keeps justifying him. The van that took the kids is heading back to Springfield and won't return. To prove to herself this is her final decision. She recorded her message over their wedding video. The images of their wedding appear on screen. Marge and Homer, young, happy, deeply in love. Homer feels betrayed. An Alaskan native woman finds him distraught and asks what's wrong. He replies, My family left me. They turned to strangers before me. Once again, he thinks only of himself. The woman tells him he needs an epiphany, or he'll spend the rest of his days alone. She gives him a potion, and Homer enters a trance. In his vision, he confronts his own selfishness, realizing others matter as much as he does, and that without them, he is nothing. If he wants to save himself, he must save Springfield. Do the Simpsons writers have visions like this? And is that how they predict the future? Well, I think there's a much simpler explanation. First, The Simpsons has always tried to reflect American society and popular culture. Unlike other series that focus only on their characters, this one addresses current topics, public figures, trends, and real-world events. If a topic is relevant, it's likely to be mentioned at some point. Second, The Simpsons writers are great comedians, and comedians have a special ability to notice what others overlook. They observe society, detect trends, and exaggerate them for comedy. But since many of their jokes stem from things already happening, not because they predict the future, but because their observational skills lead them to make accurate predictions. Third, the series has been running for over 36 seasons and more than 750 episodes. With so many chapters, they've covered an immense range of topics, from politics to technology and pop culture, and by sheer statistics, some of those stories will end up happening in real life, especially when based on real trends. For example, the episode mentioning Trump as a former president, writer Dan Greeny explained they used it as an exaggerated joke, a critique of where U.S. politics might go, and they were right. The same with Lady Gaga. They knew her style and extravagant performances, so imagining her flying over the audience wasn't far-fetched. As for Siegfried and Roy, the tiger tamers, they simply presented a realistic prediction of what could happen when someone works with wild animals. In reality, it's not that the series has prophetic powers, it's based on current events, detects patterns, and has produced so many episodes that inevitably some things end up occurring. Homer abandons Alaska and heads to Springfield. Marge and the kids arrive by train, but to their surprise, Russ and his army are waiting. They're captured and taken back to the Springfield Dome. Everything is destroyed, people are attacking each other, it's the apocalypse. Russ makes an announcement. They've decided to solve the Springfield problem by destroying the city. A bomb is lowered from a helicopter, its timer set for 15 minutes. Everyone panics and runs to hide. Meanwhile, Homer arrives, glue on his hands, climbing to the top of the dome. As soon as they see him, the whole town boos, including Bart. Frustrated, Bart goes to the church and finds Flanders. Before it all ends, he confesses he'd like to imagine, even for a moment, that he had a father who cared for him. Flanders hugs him. Time runs out, and everyone loses hope. Homer finally decides to act. He sees a motorcycle in the hole at the top of the dome, takes the bomb, and prepares to throw it out. But first, he looks for Bart and asks for another chance. He has only minutes and wants to spend them with his son. Bart hesitates. He doesn't want a father so unstable, who never knows if he'll be there for him or not. Homer makes a last attempt, saying he can carry the bomb. With that, Bart agrees. They climb onto the motorcycle and start scaling the dome. Bart apologizes for saying he wished for another father. Homer responds that he understands, that he hasn't been the best, that his own father wasn't a good model, and maybe that's why he's made so many mistakes. Marge interrupts, yelling, "Throw the bomb." They launch it, and the bomb explodes outside the dome. The structure breaks, and Springfield is free. Lisa finds Colin, and they go for ice cream. The town celebrates Homer, but he only looks for Marge, lifts her onto his motorcycle, kisses her, and they ride off together into the sunset. Homer managed to reverse his mistake and save the city. He also reconciled with his son. But knowing him, it's very likely that change won't last. It's not probable he'll become a more conscious citizen or a more responsible, mature father. If you notice, when trying to fix things with Bart, he couldn't even say, "I'm sorry," or "I love you." In his own way, he tried to show affection, but the reality is he lacks the maturity and emotional tools to be the father Bart needs. Still, Bart chose to forgive him, sticking with what Homer can give, fun and company, but stopped expecting what will never come. If he wants another kind of support, he'll find it elsewhere, like with Flanders. And that's part of what makes the series so beloved. It shows a reality many know. There's no magical transformation. Homer will remain Homer, and Bart, though he accepts and loves him, will never have the father he needs. The Simpsons doesn't hide reality but shows that sometimes life doesn't give us what we expect, that not all parents change, and that occasionally, we must seek elsewhere what we lack at home. But even when our story is far from ideal or perfect, the way The Simpsons portrays reality suggests it still matters, that our story, however imperfect, is worth telling. To you who made it to the end, thank you so much for watching the video in full. I also want to thank you for all your support and remind you that if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so now. It would help me a lot, and it'll ensure you don't miss any of my videos. That's it. See you in the next one.